this session, we'll set up jQuery and jquery.pep in our project. We'll also set up our dragger component, and by the end of this session, we'll be dragging a map around in the browser. So let's get started. We'll first start by creating a brand new branch based off of our master branch, and we can do that by typing in git checkout -b and then the name of the branch. So we're going to call this dragger component. And now we have a brand new branch where we're going to do all of our work, and by the end of this video we'll pull request it back into the master branch. So now we're going to create our first custom component, and that's called the dragger component. And I'm going to first need to create a directory for all of our components to live. So let's do that first. And you can see I've created the directory over here inside of source components. And then I'll create the actual component using the command called touch. Next, I'm going to pop open that brand new file that I just created, and I'm going to add in the boilerplate that every Vue component needs, which is a template, a script tag, as well as a style tag. Now let's go ahead and add in some default HTML. I'm going to put a paragraph tag here because every Vue component needs a top level document object. So I'm going to use a paragraph tag for now. And I'll just say hello from dragger.vue. And then next I'm going to actually create the component and export it. And there you have it. And next I want to pop over to my application Vue component here and start using my new dragger component. And I'm going to do that like so. Import dragger from So what this says is import the dragger component from the components directory, which is at the same level as my application view, and just grab it by name. And now I have it at my disposal, and I can use it throughout my app view component. And I can use it like this. I can just type property called components and pass it the dragger component. And by doing this, I've exposed this component to my template, and now I can use that throughout the template. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. Okay, and I'm going to delete a little boilerplate while I'm here. And let's go ahead and spin up our dev server like we did in the last video and see what we have. There you go. So instead of the logo, we now have hello from dragger.vue, which is rendering our dragger component. Next, let's add in an image that we can drag around. And we'll just use the default Vue logo. There you have it. And the browser wants to allow you to drag an image around, so you can do something like this. But we don't actually want that because we are eventually going to want our jQuery plugin to intercept all drag events and do all the dragging straight through the plugin and not through the default browser functionality. So we're going to add in one property to this image, and we're going to say draggable equals false, and this will set us up for the future. You can see that I'm no longer able to drag that image around. Next, we're going to actually make our image draggable, and we're going to do that through the help of jQuery and a jQuery plugin called jquery.pep.js. So this plugin just says it does kinetic drag for mobile and desktop. And if you go to the demo site, you can see that it does in fact do that. And you have a bunch of different configuration options at your disposal. So one of the ones that we'll be using is constrain to, and it allows you to basically keep your object within certain bounds, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But just know that this is a very robust drag library, and then we'll use that throughout the project. So let's go ahead and install jQuery using npm install jQuery -- save. And we'll see that an entry for jQuery has been added to our dependencies in our package.json. And then we'll also install jquery.pep, and we're going to actually install jquery.pep through Bower. And in order to use Bower, we're going to first need to init Bower. So we'll run Bower init, and we'll just follow all the prompts. There we have it. And we'll also run Bower install jquery.pep. And we'll see that it was saved in our dependencies. Next, we'll need to set up Webpack. And Webpack by default doesn't know about Bower components or our jQuery component. And eventually we're going to want to be able to write import $ from jQuery inside of our Dragger component. And we'll also want to write import jQuery import pep from jquery.pep. But we don't get that out of the box. And in order to get this sort of sugar, this syntactic sugar, we need to configure Webpack. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll first start by telling Webpack how to resolve the keywords jQuery and jquery.pep if it ever comes across those in a file and the file is trying to import those. We can do that by providing a property called resolve, and then within resolve, providing a property called alias, and then providing a list of our aliases. So we'll start with jQuery. And then we'll start with jquery.pep.js. And you can see that we are using the path module, so we'll go ahead and require that up here. And whenever we modify our Webpack config, we need to restart our server. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And let's pop back over to our Dragger and see what we have. Okay, we're good. Now we don't have any errors in the console. That tells me that these import statements are indeed working. And let me just console.log this $sign here, which is jQuery, and ensure that it is actually working. And you can see we do have the jQuery function here, and we are now set up for using jQuery. Next, we're going to wire up jquery.pep with our actual Dragger component. And we can do that by integrating with what are called the component lifecycle hooks. And the Vue documentation has a really nice diagram of how the lifecycle hooks work. You have a created lifecycle hook, you have a before compile lifecycle hook, a compiled lifecycle hook, a ready one, a before destroy one, and a destroyed one. And these are called at different points in the life of the Vue, the Vue component, and that's why they're called lifecycle hooks. And the one that we especially want to hook into is called the created lifecycle hook. And this will allow us to set up our jquery.pep.js events. So let's add a created hook here. And then we're going to create a function called onCreate. And we'll define that down here. And if we go back over to and this is where we're going to put our custom jQuery logic. So we're going to grab the document using jQuery, and we're going to wait for it to be ready. We're going to wait for the whole document to be ready. And we're going to select our image by name. And our image has a class of map, which I've given it. And I can grab that using its class name like so. And then I'm just going to invoke the pep method on the object. And if I've done everything correctly, I should be able to drag my logo around now. There you have it. One thing you'll notice is that I can fling the logo all the way out of the viewport. And that's not desirable because I have no way to get it back. So let's go ahead and set up constraints and make it so that that logo cannot go outside of the viewport. And I can do that using pep's constrain to configuration property. And I'm going to configure it to constrain itself to the window. Now you can see that I can actually drag it outside the window. Next, we are going to add in a little bit more boilerplate because we know that we want our dragger to be a mobile application. We are going to add in a little bit of boilerplate to make it look and feel a little bit more like a mobile application. So I'm just going to close some tabs here, then I'll open up the index.html file. And up here in the head, I'm going to add a meta tag. And I'm going to give it a name of viewport. And I'm going to give it a content property as well. And I'm going to say width equals device-width. And that'll set the initial width to the width of the device. So you're not going to be too zoomed in. You're not going to be too zoomed out. Initial scale is equal to 1. And then I'm going to say maximum scale. And I'm going to set that also equal to 1. And this will basically say, hey, don't ever let the user scale the viewport above 1. And then one more measure is to add in user scalable equal to no. And this will make our app feel a little more like a mobile app on a mobile browser. And then I'm going to head over to my app.vue file, and I'm going to add in some more boilerplate CSS. We'll say overflow hidden. And then we'll give it a background. We'll give it a blue background that kind of looks like water. There you have it. Now the logo is cool and all, but we're here to drag a map around and not just a simple logo. So let's go ahead and configure our dragger component to use a map and not a logo. And I have a logo sitting right here on my desktop, and you can see it's just a map of LA. It's nice and big. It takes a while to load. And this is the map that we want to use for our project. So I'm going to bring that into my project using the move command. And since it's on my desktop, I can invoke it by going into the my home directory, which is denoted as the ~desktop/map. And I'm going to move it right next to my Vue logo. So that's going to be into source, assets. And there you have it. There's our actual map. And now we can use that throughout our Dragger component. So let's do that now. And instead of logo, we're going to do map. Let's head back over to our application here, and we'll see that the map, unlike the logo, does not fit within the viewport. And it's a really big image. It takes a really long time to load. And we'll fix that by optimizing it later. But now since I had my constraint 2 set to the window before, my map, since it bleeds outside the window, can't move. I can't move it at all because it says, hey, never let it leave the window, and it is already in fact bleeding over the window, so PEP is not letting us move it at all. So we're going to need to use PEP's custom constraint 2 option. So if I go over to the documentation here for jquery.pep, I can see that constraint 2 takes the window, parent, or I can provide it with some custom coordinates to be the boundaries. And I'll need to calculate those boundaries using a function because it requires a little bit of math. So I want to really quickly illustrate how PEP's constraint 2 property works. So I'm going to actually pop over to CodePen. I'm going to use this little button right here and create a brand new CodePen and then sort of illustrate how this works. So I've added in 4 dots. You can see them here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. And I've added in some constraint 2 properties over here. So this is top, left, bottom, and right. And what this tells PEP to do is to keep the object's top left corner within these boundaries. So you can see as I'm dragging it around, I can never get the top left corner outside of those boundaries. So that's just sort of an illustration of how the math works, and we'll need to create a little bit of custom math to constrain our map to some custom boundaries. So let's go ahead and do that now. So because my image is so large, I want to first wait for its load event. So I can configure jQuery to give us a callback once the image has loaded by saying .on load and then passing it a callback. And then I'll move all of my PEP code into the actual callback. And I can see right now that I'm going to be using this map object multiple times. So I'm going to store it in a variable for easy use. So now let's go ahead and get started on that boundary calculating function. And I know that my function is going to need a reference to the map, this map here, and it's also going to need a reference to the viewport. These are the two objects or items that you're going to need their dimensions to calculate the boundaries. And I can grab the viewport by simply grabbing the window. That's what the viewport is in this case. And now that we have the map and the viewport, we're going to want to pass those to an invocation of our boundary calculator. Pass it the map. We'll also pass it the viewport. And we'll want to return an array of length 4, which are our boundaries. And let's just put some arbitrary boundaries right now. So let's just say -1000, 0, 0, -1000. And if we were to want to use these boundaries right now, we would also need to reconfigure pep down here to not use the window, but to use the boundaries. So we'll do something like this. And you can see that's a little redundant, and the brand new ES6 syntax allows us to delete that second declaration of constraint 2 and just pass it like that. If your variable and your property are named the same thing, you only need to write it once. So we'll head back over to the browser, and we'll see that we can now drag the map around. But those are just fake boundaries, and we want to use real boundaries. So let's go ahead and calculate those boundaries. So we'll first grab the top boundary, and we'll want to get the viewport height. And we'll want to subtract the map height. And we'll want to get the viewport width. And we'll want to subtract the map width. And the top value is going to be the first argument. And we don't want the top left corner of that map to ever go above 0. And we don't want the top left corner of the map to ever go above 0 for the top or for the left value. So we'll want 0 and 0 for both of these here. And then we'll want to use our new calculated left variable. And let's see how it looks. And I'll close the DevTools over here so we can get a better illustration. There we go. And there's the Goodyear map, or the Goodyear blimp. And you know what would be really cool, I think, is if you could take the URL, share it with a friend, and point them directly to the place in the map that you were looking at. But as it stands right now, that doesn't happen. If I refresh, the whole thing gets reloaded and I have to go find the Goodyear blimp manually. Now we're ready to commit our files to Git and then push those up to GitHub. So let's see all the files that we've changed. We've added dependencies to bower.json. We've added some code to index.html. We've added other dependencies to package.json. And we've modified our app.vue, brought in that map image, created our dragger component, and added in a little webpack config. Let's go ahead and commit what we have. Okay, and there we have it. We've pushed up our code to GitHub, and now let's create our first PR. And we're going to go ahead and quickly review all the work that we've done. we'll go ahead and merge in our pull request. So in our next video, we're going to hook up Vuex, which is a state management architecture. And that will be the precursor to storing the location of the map and creating a shareable URL with that location.